Welcome. We are working with Octave. We are trying to do some computations and plotting with Octave. This is the introductory session to Octave, and then we will start using it for our purposes to understand phase field modeling. One of the things that I have shown you is how to do calculations with Octave. The other thing to do is to plot using Octave, and of course, for doing both, I have also shown you how to take help from Octave itself, and how some of that information is actually more than just help in working with Octave. It can actually tell you lots of other useful information in terms of mathematics, algorithms, programming and so on. Okay. So, the way that I have been interacting with Octave is what is known as the interactive mode, in which I type something on the terminal and then Octave immediately responds to it. But this is not the best way of dealing with Octave, because sometimes we want to give a set of commands, we want Octave to execute all of it, we do not want to know in the middle as to what is happening, or at every step Octave telling us what is happening. For doing that, there is the so called script mode of interacting with Octave. In script mode, we basically take a text file, and in the text file we type all the commands that we want Octave to execute. We save that text file in the same directory from which you are going to invoke Octave. So, this requires some explanation. I will actually show you how it works, and that is where invoking Octave from the terminal is a very good idea, because you can do that quite comfortably. And then we are going to execute the script that we have written. The script is going to be very simple. It is a 2-line script. It is going to plot sine function from 0 to 2 pi. Okay, so that is what we want to do. First, I will show you in the interactive mode how to do that, and then we will go to doing it in the script mode. Of course, first thing, let me invoke Octave. So, I have Octave. I am going to say x is equal to 0 to, let me increase in steps of 0.1, 2 pi, right. So, 2 into pi is 2 pi, very good. So, if I do that, you can see it goes from 0, 0.1, 0.2 etc. It goes up to 6.2, because pi is 3.14 and 2 pi is 2 into 3.14, so it is about 6.2. This is right. Then I say plot x sin x, right. I have a plot, this is a sine function which is plotted. Of course, you can plot any function. So, you can say plot x cos x, so it will plot you the cos x, right, and you can say plot x tan x, and it will plot you tan x. Okay. So, it is possible to plot any of these functions. So, the exercise that we have now is to do this plotting using script mode. Okay. So, I am going to show you from the beginning how to do it in the script mode, because this is slightly involved. If you are using MATLAB, there are some advantages that you would see, that for example, you can write the script by having drop down menu from which you can choose. And you can just write the script there, but when you are using Octave, you have to use a text editor, and that text editor should be a simple text editor. Gedit or Notepad is very good. You can't use things like Word or Office or something like that, because if there are hidden characters, then Octave has problems in dealing with it. So, a simple text editor is what will do the job for you, and I generally use a text editor called Gedit, which again is free, and you can download and load it onto your computers. So, we are going to do it in steps. So, I am going to start from the beginning. So, let us exit all this. First thing I am going to do is that I am going to open the terminal. In my computer, I have a specific directory structure. So, on the desktop there is a directory called teaching, in which there is a directory called the phase field MOOC. Okay, there is nothing in that directory as of now. This is the directory in which I want to save my scripts, and that is the script I want to run. So, the first thing that I need to do is to actually go to this directory, which is what I have done. CD stands for change directory in Ubuntu. So, if I ask what is the present working directory PWD, it says it is in home, guru, desktop, teaching, face field, MOOC, that is where I am. Now, I am going to invoke Octave from this directory. This step is very important, because if you do not do this, if you just invoke Octave from one directory and if your script is lying somewhere else, then Octave will keep complaining that there is no such file. Okay. So, the first thing that you do is you go to the directory in which you are going to save your script and invoke Octave from that particular directory. So, this is the first important step. After I have done this, let me open a text editor. So, I have a text editor called gedit, and it has an untitled document in which I am going to type whatever I typed on the screen. First step is x is equal to 0 in steps of 0.1, 2 into pi. Of course, I do not want things to be printed to the screen. So, I am going to put a colon here, and then I am going to say plot x comma sin of x, right. So, I am going to save. Where am I going to save? I am going to save it as desktop, teaching, and the face field MOOC, and I am going to save it just to say that this is an Octave file. I am going to give an extension called OCT, and I am going to save this as plotting, plotting sign.oct. Okay. So, this is very important. I can't call this file as plot.oct, because plot is a command that is in Octave. So, no file name can have the same name. I can't call this as sign.oct, because sign is again a specific command in Octave. So, no function names or any of these command names can be used as the file name for the file that you are saving. Okay. So, this is one of the mistakes that happen at the beginning, and if you make such a file, even if you delete it, Octave will somehow remember that you have made a file called plot or sign, and it will keep complaining. So, the only way I found is to exit Octave and then again invoke Octave and then work with it. So, in the directory in which you are invoking Octave from, there should not be any files which are named after the commands or function calls of Octave. So, it is very important. So, that is why I have named it as plotting sign, and in general in Linux machines, the capitals and small letters are distinguished. So, I used capital P and capital S. I need to remember that. So, in Octave now I can check if I am in the right directory. So, yes, I am in the right directory. So, present working directory works here also. I want to know what are the files in this directory. I can ask it to list. So, list will say okay, there is a file called plotting sign. Now, I want Octave to run this file and show me the sine curve, right. How do I do that? I say source, right, and then you give the name of the file. Well, it plotted and showed it to you. So, this way of interacting with Octave is the preferred mode. At least in this course we will prefer this, because many a times we want to do some computation and then we want to generate some results and then we want it to be plotted. So, we do not want to continuously keep interacting with Octave. I do not want to give one command by one command. I do not want to say okay, x is this, and then it says okay, I have taken, then I say okay, plot this, and then it does, and then I say okay, do this computation, and then it does that. And the computation itself might be 4 or 5 lines, like we were struggling with the error calculation for the Stirling approximation, for example. So, I do not want to do that. I want to write all my commands in one go, and then I want it to execute. So, I am going to show one final trick for this lecture. This is to plot more than one curve in the same plot, right. I have plotted sine. Suppose I want to plot both the sine and cosine in the same curve. How do I do that? So, I am going to take the script file, I am going to modify it a little bit and then I am going to plot it and show it to you. So, let us do that. So, I have the file, it is very trivial, comma x, comma cos of x, and then I am going to save it as a different file, plotting sine and cos. Okay, so, let me call that as plotting sine and cos dot oct and go back, and then of course, plotting sine cos dot oct, if you say it would plot both sine and cos. I do not know if it is clear to you on the screen, but the cosine is plotted with green color and sine is plotted with the blue color. So, by default it will plot it with two different colors, so that you can distinguish which plot is what. Suppose I wanted to plot the cosine with points and not with a line as it is plotted, you can do that, and here is how you do it. You go to the script, you change it, you say that plot it with points. Okay. So, let us save this and let us go to Octave and let us redo this. Let us see how the picture looks like. So, you can see that now the cosine is plotted, but the cosine is plotted with some stars. Okay, I do not know if you can see the stars, but that is the stars that it has used. So, there are ways of controlling the color, the symbol, the way the plot is made, and so on and so forth. So, those are all available in the tutorial that we have written to Professor Pant and me, and it is available for you for download. You can download and work with that. But for our purposes, this is sufficient. So, if you have some practice with these things, we will give you some tutorial problems for you to work with, which will make you familiar with this kind of calculations and plotting. Then that is sufficient for our purposes, so that we can move on to doing actual calculations for the course on phase field modeling using Octave, which is what we will start doing from the next lecture onwards. Thank you.